Morning, morning everybody, and welcome to the Corporate Governance meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for broadcast live after the meeting. The first agenda item is the minutes from the last meeting. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th September 2022 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Yeah, agreed by everybody. I've no questions from the public. Questions asked by members. I've received no questions. There are no urgent items. Does any member have any declarations of interest?
Usual one, Chairman, as a Lloyds Bank pensioner.
Thanks very much. No petitions have been received. So item 7 is the first substantive item. The East Midlands Shared Services internal audit work undertaken by Nottingham City Council. Now we have, am I correct in thinking we have Simon from Nottingham City Council, is that correct? He's online. Okay, Simon Parsons from Nottingham City Council is going to join us online, I'm hoping. It doesn't appear to be there at the moment. So, good. He's not there, I don't think, is he?
No, I'm just trying to get him.
All right, we're just trying to get him. Just bear with us a second. No, I didn't either. I agree, Mr. Bill. Can't have enough of a good thing.
Must be twins.
Yeah. Okay. Well, while we're doing that, we'll go on to the next item, which is the update on external audit of the 2021-22 Statement of Accounts, Annual Government Statement and Pension Fund. Nick Walsh, Head of Finance, will introduce this item before handing over to Mark Stocks from Grant Thornton, who is attending the meeting remotely. So, over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, just as a quick reminder, the external audit started back in mid-July for the pension fund and in August for the County Council as planned. As it stands, no material issues have been reported so far, other than obviously the national issue, which relates to the accounting for infrastructure assets, which was previously notified to the committee. The latest position on this is that the government have issued draft legislation, which they intend to enact by the end of December. So because of this, there will be a slight delay with the auditor's findings report, which now is expected to be reported to this committee in January the 23rd. The auditor anticipates being able to substantially complete their work by the end of November. At least that was the last I was under the impression that, so Mark will hopefully confirm that. And then obviously Appendix A to the report includes the auditor's update, and Mark will come on and present that shortly. Just in terms of one other point on the report, it also includes an update on the PSAA procurement exercise for the next external auditor appointment period, and that's from 23-24 for a period of 5 years. PSAA have awarded new contracts to 6 auditing firms, including Grant Thornton, and have notified LCC of their proposal for Grant Thornton to continue as the county's auditors. Unfortunately, PSAA have also advised that bid prices were significantly higher than before, with increases of 150% on current fees to be expected. This reflects the pressures in the audit market around capacity and increased regulatory requirements. So that was all I was going to say. So yeah, through you, Chair, and over to Mark.
So good morning, Mark. Over to you, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Nick. As Nick says, we've made reasonable progress through the audits. As we sit here today, then the pension fund audit is now complete, and the IS 19 letters that we have to send out to the districts are ready to go. In terms of that audit, there's one sort of sizable issue. It's not a material issue, but you know, when you put the accounts together, then they're based on estimates. We have obviously, you know, as time goes by, then those estimates actually become actuals. So the value of investments has actually gone up by a substantial figure, but you know, nothing that I would consider to be out of the norm. So the pension fund audit is complete. We did debate actually bringing the audit findings report to you today, but we couldn't quite make the committee deadline, and it seemed sensible to do it all together in January. So as Nick said, the council audit is well progressed. We are hoping to complete by the end of November. Has been some delays, I think, on both our sides, so I need to look at the capacity of my team that I put into the audit, and then there's been a few delays on the council side, particularly around property, plant and equipment, but we've had some, I think, some open and friendly discussions just about that, and we'll have a sit down after the accounts just to make sure that we can sort of improve the processes for next year. There's nothing I need to report back to you in terms of substantial amendments or errors in the financial statement, so we've not come across anything that is of significant concern to me as we sit here today. As Nick said, the key reason we can't sign in November is infrastructure, because most authorities don't, including Leicestershire, don't have the records that we're now asking for in terms of that figure. There is a statutory instrument going to pass through Parliament, and that will come into play on Christmas Day, actually. So that will pass through. So obviously, didn't want to call you back on Christmas Day to sign the accounts. So and then there's some guidance from SIPFA as well that's going to come through. So come January, we should be able to sign both the county accounts and the pension fund accounts. There is a paper. I'm not going to read through the paper. It just outlines basically what we've said, and in fact, you've got more up-to-date information that's actually in the paper. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. So over to members. Mr. Bill.
Did I understand you to say that the pension fund had actually gone up? That seems to be quite remarkable in the current circumstances.
It's a good question. So this was obviously at the 31st of March 22. So there's been a few changes, hasn't there, since then? So, but in terms of the estimate that was in the financial statements, then the actuals at the 31st of March 2022 are actually higher. Now, obviously, there's been a few events since March 22. So, you know, I take no view on what the value of those investments are as of today.
I was hoping we were going to get some good news on a Monday morning. So
Yeah.
So, unfortunately not from me. So
No, I think we'd all like some good news on a Monday morning. Mr. Bill.
Just on the fund value, it has gone down since the 31st of March. It's recovered a little bit, but it is lower than what it was. So unfortunately,
in honesty, I think that probably what we'd expect given what's happened. So if there's no other questions, Mr. Richardson.
Can I just ask, what is the implication of the financial instruments on infrastructure in terms of potential? Is it an increase or decrease workload for both the auditors and the council, or is it, which way round does it go?
So it's a net nil implication, I think, in terms of workloads. What it prevents is officers having to do a substantial level of work to try and recreate records in relation to infrastructure, because obviously, we know the value of infrastructure, but there's issues around, well, should parts of the infrastructure assets have been de-recognised, were the asset lives right? There's a whole heap of things we're being asked to do, which, I'm not clear of the value to the council of us doing it in that depth. So what the statutory instrument does is buys us a little bit of time so we can work with SIPFA and the department to try and find an appropriate measure for your infrastructure, because obviously the roads and the street lamps don't disappear, they're still there, but there's just a question of, well, exactly how should they be valued. So the statutory instrument's really important in terms of not putting an extra burden on your team and not putting an extra burden on my team, and giving us a bit more time to sort out exactly how we do account for it. So it is a positive step.
Thank you very much. Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to note the concern, which I'm sure is shared with others on this committee, about the very substantial increase in the fees for the audit, the 150% increase on total fees. I understand the reasons for it, and I appreciate it is what it is, but nonetheless, it is a very significant increase, and I think should be noted that there is concern with regard to that.
Thank you very much, Neil. I think that's a fair comment. Mr. Bolton.
Same as Neil, actually, Chair, but there's a negotiation taking place about this fee. 150, it says about 150% increase. Surely it's negotiable. All contracts are negotiable. It's the amount of time the auditors spend on it and the level of expertise they put into it. Should be some debate somewhere about that, surely. We shouldn't just sit down and accept 150% increase and say, oh, tough, but it's a lot of money. And, we're charged with governance, so let's govern and see what we can do with it and see if we can reduce that fee at all.
I'm sure I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Bolton, but I'm sure that officers have queried it.
We're kind of probably a little bit sort of stuck it. Obviously, the audit market was in a sort of a bit of a sort of state of crisis. So most authorities, in fact, almost all, signed up with the PSAA again for another few years. So your choices really are to go on your own or go with the kind of the group procurement that sort of everybody else is going to. And obviously, sort of the big audit firms, they don't want lots of sort of small little sort of tenders to do, so the chances are if you go on your own you end up sort of stuck without an auditor or having to just sort of take what they'd offer to everybody else anyway. So we are unfortunately in a bit of a sort of a take it or leave it kind of position. So yeah, nobody kind of likes the level of fee, but I don't think there's a huge amount we can do with it at the moment. It's just sort of a bit of a market that sort of was in a bit of a sort of, I don't know, got itself sort of not into a good state, and we're sort of seeing the consequence of it now.
Thanks, Declan. Thanks for those points, valid points. If there are no other questions, then moving to the recommendations, the committee is asked to note the update on the external audit of 21-22 and the appointment of the external auditors for 23-24. I take this as agreed. Is everybody agreed? Thank you. So now we're going to return to the first item on the agenda, which is the East Midlands Shared Services internal audit work undertaken by Nottingham City Council. And we welcome Simon Parsons, who is going to present this item. So he was there a moment ago, and hopefully he'll come back. Oh, there he is. Good morning, Simon. So over to you.
Morning. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Sorry about the delay in attending. So I'm just for introduction purposes. So I'm the audit manager from Nottingham City Council's internal audit section. As was mentioned in the report to your committee, that partnership's been formed for what's been going for sort of 10 years. During that time, my team have done the internal audit for East Midlands Shared Services. The coverage on our annual plan for EMSS has largely covered accounts payable, accounts receivable, HR payroll, with some additions as well. Typically, we report our work to the head of East Midlands Shared Services, and then later share our reports with Leicestershire via the internal audit section. Normally, we would hope to provide an overall opinion by May each year, which is drawn from the results of our work that we complete during the period. So the 21-22 audit plan outturn, which you have some detail on in the report. Then there were, for 21-22, lots of challenges, as we probably all know, for the East Midlands Services team with implementing Fusion. And that in itself has impacted on our ability to undertake the necessary work we need to do. And specifically, it has been a challenge for us in obtaining access for auditors. The data we require, and also some time from the individuals within EMSS to help us, really. The result of that has been delays in is completing our work, which in turn has delayed us issuing a head of audit opinion, which you've received. Page 16 of your report shows very briefly the results of the 21-22 audits in our plan for EMS, as I say, AP, AR, HR payroll, and some IT systems administration work as well. I suppose the things to note would be the change in the level of assurance from 2021 to 21-22 in respect of the HR payroll. So as you can see in the table on page 16, it shows a limited assurance. And that's influenced by, as I say, really, the limitations to our intended scope of the work. So we have a set amount of work to do each year, and we were basically struggling to actually complete all of that in the time that we actually had. And one of the restrictions was around just us accessing the necessary documentation to allow us to complete the work. Plus, there is the, at the time, and probably still is to a degree, the ongoing issues that were experienced by the payroll team as well. So we felt that overall limited assurance for that one was actually probably justified. The other change that's worth noting in that table as well was there was slight change from significant to moderate in respect of the accounts payable audit, which was a bit not the same, but slightly affected by the fact that our access was also limited to an extent, really, in terms of what we wanted to do and what we were able to do at the time. So that kind of dropped the level of assurance from significant for the previous year to moderate. So overall, when it comes to sort of looking at the work that we do, then we felt that it was, influenced to quite an extent by the results from the payroll audit. So overall, the level of assurance was dropped to limited for that particular. Before I go on to the audit plan for the current year, questions around what I just said there. I'll continue if you wish. Okay, so current year's plan, 22-23, which is detailed on page 18 and page 19 of the report, similar to 21-22. We would typically, with the work we do on Fusion, it would be in the back end of the financial year anyway, and we're at the planning stages of most of the audits. So at this point, there are no results to share with this committee. It is a little bit early to predict the expected completion of the 22-23 audit plan, but we are in dialogue with the EMSS team with a view to ensuring that this year's plan is achieved in its entirety and in time. I think that's all I was going to add there.
Right, thank you, very much, Simon, for the update there. Have we got any questions from members? Mr. Richardson.
So just a quick one, Chair, if I may. Well, I appreciate you've not been able to complete the full audit, but bearing in mind there's a new system gone in, the new Fusion system, one would have thought an evaluation earlier than what is predicted would be worthwhile. And also, I would have thought as part of the audit plan, there should be a value for money part of. I mean, most audit plans now do a value for money comments. That would be useful to see a value for money audit based on the procurement of the Fusion system. Has it worked, and is it actually giving good value for money? Because I think from what I've seen on other committees, I don't think we're convinced that the system is working as effectively or cost effectively as it should do. And it would be useful to have an audit to either prove or disprove that.
I understand what you mean. I think that question's probably more for the partners, really, given that our role here is as EMSS auditors, so it is very much around the system as is operating. I think I'm not dismissing what you said there, but I think value for money, and whether that's, it was a good move to move on to Fusion, is probably something for both partners, really, as opposed to me undertaking that one in isolation. So I suppose partners would have to probably jointly commission that if they so wish. One thing I would say is, just, this is not an excuse, but one thing I would say is that our time is limited in terms of our overall audit plan. I'm sure your internal audit section have got lots to do in their plan. We have as well, so it's a case of fitting in extra work as best we can, really. So like I say, but back to the addressing that question, and I do think that it's probably a question for partners as to whether they jointly want that piece of work doing, really. That's all I can say at the moment. As it stands, then there's no intention to do that.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any other questions? We haven't. No, we haven't. So we are asked to note the contents of the report. Is that agreed? Yeah, agreed. Thanks very much. So now we're on to the risk management update, and as part of this item, there will be a presentation by John Wilson, Director of Adults and Communities, on corporate risk, 7 Form, social care reform, implementation of charging reform and assurance process. He is supported also by Christine Collingwood, Programme Manager. So, please come forward. Sorry. Yeah. So, good morning, John. We'll let you carry on.
Thank you, Chair. I think I need to share my screen. Waiting for permission to share the screen.
Yeah, that's fine. You can share your screen. Yep, I thought we had a technical glitch, actually. I didn't. Karen.
I'm logged in, but yeah, I can't share. I don't have permission.
Oh. There we go. That's great.
Thank you. So yes, adult social care reform. I think when we put this on the agenda, we're in a slightly different place to the position that we find ourselves in today. But nevertheless, so I just wanted to update in terms of some of the key elements of adult social care reform, which are set out in a couple of white papers, but principally the People at Heart of Care white paper. And what that paper was seeking to achieve was a reform of the adult social care system, both in terms of how social care was delivered to people, but also in terms of how social care was funded. And the main elements there were the introduction of the cap the amount that anybody would be expected to pay in their lifetime for social care, the way that financial assistance was provided to people, and particularly that related to a change to the thresholds at which people became self-funders, or the thresholds at which people would receive state-funded care, enabling people to who were self-funders to ask the local authority to arrange care on their behalf. And the reason for that was for a long time there's been a view that people who funded their own care were effectively subsidising the state, because the care market would charge different amounts to people who funded their own care from the amounts that we would pay for care. And within that, a view that if everybody had access to the same arrangements that local authorities had for arranging care, then that would create more fairness within the market. In addition to that, there was much wider support for the social care workforce, a recognition around recruitment, retention, career development, issues that we have been facing for a number of years. A significant change in giving CQC the power to assure local authorities and inspect local authority social care systems. Improving integration between health and social care, and a renewed emphasis on the local authority having the responsibilities and the duties to ensure that there was a high quality care market available for people. So they were the kind of the main elements. And of course, with the announcements that came last week as part of the Chancellor's statement, certainly the introduction of the cap on personal care, and we think the changes to the thresholds for care, although none of this is clear because we've had the kind of the autumn statement, but what we haven't had is any of the detail that sits behind it. So we're making some assumptions around this, but we think that the cap and the change to thresholds and the ability for self-funders to ask local authorities to arrange their care has been delayed until at least 2025. But notwithstanding that, there are other elements that will still go forward. So assurance, secrecy assurance of local authorities will still, we think, go forward from April next year. The issue around the fair cost of care, which was something that the government asked all local authorities to review over the course of the summer of this year. So every local authority undertook an exercise to look at what a cost of care might look like. We submitted that detail to government in October. We reported it through Cabinet in the council. Notwithstanding the fact that some of the charging reforms have now clearly been delayed, there is a view that much of that work has sort of now been put in the public domain. So you can use whichever kind of wording you want, but I've heard colleagues saying, you know, the cat's out of the bag, can of worms has been opened, stables closed after the horse has bolted, whichever phrase you want to use. There will be an expectation by social care providers that the costs that were identified within that cost of care exercise will be met by local authorities. And those costs are higher than the costs that we currently deliver. And that's true of all local authorities across the country. It's the nature of the work that we did. It was the exercise we undertook based on the formula that the government gave us. So there will be an inflationary pressure on local authorities moving forward that we will have to address when we set our fees going forward in terms of fees, particularly for care homes, but also for domiciliary care. So moving on, in terms of the issues and risks, we know that the LGA, the County Councils Network, Newton Europe, many other organisations had called into question the amount of funding that was available, the 3.7 billion that the government made available. Most commentators were saying it would be at least double that amount. Certainly the information that was coming back from the trailblazing authorities, there were 6 authorities that did some early work on this, and the information that was coming back from them was suggesting that the government had hadn't put anywhere near enough money aside for it. Possibly why the decision was taken to delay. The impact in terms of the significant changes required to all of our financial systems, data systems, digital systems, meant that from a local government perspective, the LGA, County Councils Network and others were suggesting that the government should delay. So the delay was welcomed in many quarters, from the perspective of being able to deliver the reforms, not just the cost of delivering them, but the actual ability to deliver them. As I said, the identification of revised fees as part of the fair cost of care exercise created some significant tension for local government in terms of the demand and the inflationary pressures that would bring. Managing the expectations of people, obviously, one of the headlines around all of the kind of the social care reform was that people would reach the cap and then not have to pay anything towards anything other than that towards the cost of their care. That was never the case, but that was the headline that was kind of purported. So managing that expectation was always going to be difficult. Increasing the demand, we would have been looking at an additional possibly 5,000 assessments a year. We simply don't have the capacity to undertake that, so we'd have to look at different ways of doing that. The workforce isn't there, primarily around social workforce, but also other colleagues around financial assessments. We'd have really struggled, I think, to bring that workforce forward by October next year, so possibly the delay is a good thing in that respect. In terms of assurance, we're working on an assurance document now, a self-assessment for CQC for April, which we'll be sharing with the Adults Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the new year. But what's already clear is that it's unlikely that as an authority, we would be in a position of getting an excellent rating. Well, it would be impossible for us to get an excellent rating, in my view, given our current feedback that we get through the Service User and Carer Survey, the annual survey that takes place, which places Leicestershire in the third and fourth quartile for some of that feedback, which would limit our ability to pass the inspection. And then, of course, just made the comment there at the bottom around uncertainty regarding reform timescales. There's much that we still don't know, and that we'll probably find out over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks, and running up to the settlement in December. So moving on to the reform programme that we put in place, which sort of, I suppose, as part of our mitigation against the risk of the whole reform programme, we put a significant programme of work in place. We have been running that programme now for around 6 months. We report quarterly to the Adults Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the programme of reform. We've been monitoring the financial implications, and we'd reported to Cabinet in October that our current modelling was showing a potential £20 million gap between the available funding we thought we would be allocated and the cost to the authority of implementing the full reforms. We have undertaken a piece of work around fair cost. We developed a market sustainability plan. We'll be continuing to update that plan as we go forward. We have a workforce implications plan in place, and we had prepared a communications plan that we were due to launch anytime now, actually, but clearly we've put that on hold for the time being. And as I said earlier, we are undertaking work to prepare for the CQC assurance, and we'll be reporting that in the new year. So that's probably sufficient, I would think.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. I think that's certainly updated us, and without a doubt, there's some significant challenges ahead in virtually every direction. David.
Obviously, very serious news. Could we ask that both the slides and John's presentation is circulated to every, I think it should be circulated to the full county members, because this is possibly its biggest risk to the whole of the county council. I think everybody should be made aware of what the situation we face. Could that be? Could we organise that?
I can't see that will present a problem. No, I will perhaps do that. It's to be honest, we'll make members aware, but it won't actually solve the problem. But yeah, no, we'll at least make them aware. Sir Richardson, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps I'll just make a comment, Chair, as with my other hat on as Chairman of Adults Communities Committee. The committee's done a huge amount of effort and time working at this with John, as he knows. I agree with David that I think there's now less risk to us than there was, in fact, last Thursday with the delay in the announcement. Because as John has said, the biggest risk was how do we actually fund running the system, for want of a better description, with the limited funds available. And some of the other aspects John has mentioned, such as the reviews we get from residents and carers, is a long-standing one. We don't know why, but we seem to provide a similar service to other counties, but I've never cracked this nut of why it is we get worse reviews than other areas. We seem to have an issue where expectation level in Leicestershire seems to be, and we've looked at this probably for the last 4 years now, greater here than in other similar county areas, and we've never worked out why. So I think on behalf of the committee that I chair, I think we can give assurance that this is high on the agenda. As John says, he's looked at quarterly. I think the team have done a stellar amount of work, but it is a large risk. I don't believe it's the biggest risk facing the council. I still think that's probably SEN and children's services personally, but it is a fundamentally large risk. But until we see the result of the government funding, which I don't know if John's able to comment on, just his early thoughts on the additional funding that was announced in the financial statement last Thursday and what that might mean. Nothing will hold him to for this council, but is there some good news, John, in that the extra money that's been announced?
Good news. It's always good news to get extra money, isn't it? And, Declan and Corporate Finance Council might also want to comment, but so we know there are some tranches of funding that have been announced from 2023-24 onwards. Obviously, we've not seen any of the detail of those yet. They'll all come with conditions. They'll all come with reporting requirements. We don't know what they will be, other than the headline, which says this will allow for 200,000 more social care assessments to take place, which is, and as we reported through to Orby and Scrutiny Committee recently, like all authorities in the country, we do have a backlog of people waiting for assessment. So that's a good thing. If that funding is there to do that, that would be great. That would be great. We have just this morning received some guidance and some in terms of funding that's been released for this financial year, which was announced in September, but actually, the announcement that we would get funding was in September. We've only just this morning received the guidance in terms of what that funding will look like and what the conditions will be, and it's all predicated on hospital discharges and freeing up hospital beds. And there are a whole number of restrictions around that funding. There are a whole number of conditions with fortnightly reporting, which I've never seen before in any local authority funding settlement. So I think what we can say is that going forward, we know that there will be some additional funding. It's likely to be tied to the NHS fairly closely. It's likely to come with very strict reporting requirements, and it's likely to have some very tight conditions around it. So whilst I welcome the funding, I think, our ability to be able to determine for ourselves where we want to use it will be severely limited, is what I would say.
Yeah, I can add some bits. I think John summed it up well in terms of where we are sort of from sort of the corporate finance perspective. But the bits that add is government assume that we'll increase council tax by the maximum in all the sort of the funding. So there's always a little bit of a sort of a local sting in the tail, although council tax does come with a bit more freedom of how you can use it. But at this stage, we haven't had details of the formulas and how they're going to sort of actually sort of allocate that money out. We're hopeful that we'll get something in advance of the local government settlement, but because that's an unusual stance for them to take, we're not quite sure of the quality of that and how much it'll actually allow us to work through. But it's going to be a bit of a watch this space probably for the next few weeks. But yeah, the conditions on funding could be a real headache for us because we've already got a financial gap, and if you've got new activity to do as opposed to just kind of filling the gap, it doesn't necessarily help.
Thank you, Declan. Has anybody got any other questions? Mr. Walter.
Well, it's a comment really, Chair, that it might be very good news for the County Council Finance Department, but it's bad news for the residents of Leicestershire who were expecting to have a limit on the amount of the money they've got to pay. So it's a two-edged sword, isn't it? County Council wins, residents lose. I know we're here to look after the residents of the County Council. In my view, it's the residents who should be looked after. And I'm disappointed that the government's delayed the implementation of these things.
Thanks, Mr. Walter. I think it's very much that the resources are as John has. I understand exactly what you're saying. It is a double-edged sword. There is more money coming through, but it'll be specified, and it's the capacity to do it. If it was to be implemented in October this year, I don't think it would have been possible. I just don't think it would be possible to do it because we just haven't got the capacity. But I'm certainly no expert on this, but I think Mr. Richardson and his Advocates and Community Scrutiny Group will keep a very close eye on it. And yeah, I very much take your point. So thank you very much, John, for that presentation. If there are no other questions, we're then going to move back to the main report, and we've got Matt Davis, who is going to report, who is going to present. Of course, I've seen you before, Matt. I suddenly had a blind spot there. I wonder where you'd gone. So I'm losing people on the screen and in the face. Right, so over to you, Matt.
That's fine, don't worry. Thank you, Chair. I was going to say earlier when we were going to introduce Simon Parsons that Neil's unavoidably away. He's had an operation, so I'm representing Neil today. Just to add a bit of context to that, I am, just so that you know, I'm audit manager partly for Leicestershire County Council, but a lot more for ESPO and Leicestershire Fire and Rescue. The significance of that is some of my work is predominantly focused Leicestershire County Council wise on corporate resources. So I've had, with that in mind, I've had less exposure to some of the risks than that are on the risk register than both members and indeed officers that are present here today. I wanted to give my perspective though as an audit manager initially, just as by way of intro before we go into the report, and that is because we've been slightly under-resourced as a service purely because of vacancies that we needed to fill. My focus has been up to now a lot more focused on areas affecting my area of the audit plan, input anything relevant to the risks to this committee prior to, and then receive a briefing from Neil of any outputs relevant to my service area. As I said, this is because we did need to fill some vacancies, which brings me nicely onto. I was listening to the YouTube footage yesterday of some of the Neil mentioned about the capacity and said that we're delighted to announce that the following Monday after that meeting that we've got a new member of staff starting, and that is Joe here, my new colleague. So it's excellent to have Joe on board, but to be honest, an external appointment into the role of senior auditor, and literally in the last couple of weeks, Joe's been able to get on with looking at the corporate risk management framework as part of her role. So Joe's very much here in an observer capacity today. We've now got the opportunity, obviously, though, with full capacity to add continuity between the risk management process and the audit plan further. So we'd be able to have further in-depth knowledge of both the senior auditor and a single audit manager for all the risks on the risk register, which I think is really healthy, strength in depth. And indeed, Joe and I were discussing last week, areas where we think we probably need to do some more testing, for example, of the mitigating actions on the risk register. So with the backdrop of that, while we'll do our best to answer any questions on the report, I just thought I'd better add that context to it. A quick canter through the actual report itself then. The purpose, as it suggests, is to provide a routine corporate risk register update and also some information on the work we've done in respect of mitigating the risk of fraud. Paragraphs 2 to 5 briefly explain the Corporate Governance Committee role in respect of risk management and the risk register process, before then reference into Appendix A where the details are recorded. I know that's often the crux of discussion within this committee. Before going off for his operation, Neil and in addition Joe fed back to me that there was good engagement in terms of updating the positions with corporate risks, but we did also discuss that the last time the committee was held was less than 2 months ago, so there's been a lot less movement than typical in that interim period because it's less than 2 months. Paragraphs 6 to 8 of the report highlight a new risk in relation to the Care Quality Commission inspection, and then also amendments, slight wording amendments to 2 of the descriptions of the two long-standing risks, longer standing risks. Just going back to the Care Quality Commission, I know that will probably be one that's wanted to be looked at in more depth at our next meeting. So before we try to answer any questions in respect of the risks in Appendix A, as a reminder, obviously, we're seeking approval for the current status of the risk register as defined in Appendix A. We are making recommendations that in risk 7.6 in respect of Care Quality Commission is an area that might benefit from further examination. And also, quite importantly, paragraphs 10 to 22 go into a lot of detail as to how we're mitigating the risk of fraud. So it's just to note that update as well. So we'll happily take any questions now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Matt. Mr. Walter.
Thank you, Chair. Right. I constantly ask Neil Jones if he's got sufficient resources to do the internal audit, and the answer's always come back yes. Now we hear this morning that there's shorter resources, so there's a bit of a mismatch there between what we've been told in the past and what we've been told this morning, so perhaps that needs to be clarified. Any news about Arriva at all? 'Cause that's been going on for such a long while. I was hoping by this meeting it would be resolved and we know what's happening, if it's gone away or whether it's still pending.
Yeah, if I may take the first point and
Please,
then hand over to
please.
Declan for the second, if that's
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, yeah, there is always a train, if you like, of auditors leaving and retiring and new ones coming in. So there'll always be a slight dip, but I think Neil's response is the ability to actually deliver the plan rather than the actual capacity full stop in the service, which we are now totally at full capacity again, having had a couple of retirements and then replaced them. So hopefully that clarifies that point. Sorry if that was a little bit vague initially.
Thank you. Thanks. Declan.
And in terms of Arriva, unfortunately, no update at this time. We'll get a more full update for the next committee. Appreciate it's been sort of raised the last couple.
Thank you. Thanks. So have we got any other questions? Mr. Richardson.
It's only really probably a bit more of a presentational one. I noticed obviously we got a separate heading for Russian invasion of Ukraine, and then further down we've got obviously the immigration situation, other people coming in, which again has gone up quite rightly to a 25. I just wonder, but it's under medium-term financial strategy, whereas I would have thought a lot of the risks are now coming earlier as we see Serco moving people into the county, implications on education. So I just wonder if perhaps there should have been a combined heading for not just Ukraine, but for all of the asylum seekers and the impact on the council under one heading, give a better picture, because I just think that some of these financial pressures, and I don't know if Declan will agree, might come earlier than what's implied under the medium-term financial strategy in these areas, particularly with the increase in risk, and where we've already seen movement of people into several of the districts across the county already. Particularly, I think there's issues in Melton, for instance, with families being moved in where we've got to find school places, doctor surgeries. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I just wonder if we need perhaps a generic risk for those issues rather than split it between the two.
I think it's a good point. Obviously, sort of when the Ukrainian one was put on there, it was a very sort of specific focus that came with its own kind of funding. But I think you're right, as it's become clearer, this isn't a few month issue that's just going to go away. It's becoming more of kind of how does the county deal with refugees per se. So I think it's we'll have a chat with the risk owner about what's the appropriate time. And there may, while we've still got sort of a separate funding stream, they may want to keep it separate. But I think if it, as this risk does look like it persists, at some point we do have to move, as you suggest, to just one risk.
Thanks, Mr. Richardson. Good point. So, have we got any other queries? No, we haven't. We are moving to the recommendations which are set out on page 43 of the agenda pack. Regarding recommendation A, the committee is asked to approve the current status of the strategic risks facing the county council. I'm happy to move this recommendation. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you. Can I take it as agreed? Yep. Agreed. Thanks very much. Regarding the next presentation, it's certainly if adults and communities fail to provide a robust evidence of good practice for the Quality Care Commission inspectors, then this will result in a poor inspection outcome and incur reputational risk alongside extra resources and possible external governance to undertake any action required. So I think it's hope we could have a presentation on that. Has everybody agreed with that? Okay, thank you. With regard to recommendation C, can I take the update regarding the mitigation of the risk fraud as being duly noted? Yeah, there's no dissent. Thank you. Can we also take the presentation provided by John Wilson on risk 7.4 regarding adult social care reform? Is that agreed? Yeah, take it as agreed. Thanks very much. So the next item is item 10, which is the Clinical Governance Annual Report 21-22. And we have with us this morning Fiona Grant from the Public Health Fiona Grant, Public Health Consultant, who will present this item. So thanks for joining us, Fiona. So over to you when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. So the purpose of the report is to update the committee on clinical governance work since we previously presented at the end of last year. As the committee will probably be aware, a key part of the public health function and a requirement of one of the conditions of the public health grant is that we make sure we've got very robust processes in place in terms of clinical governance for those clinical services that we commission. And by clinical governance, we very much are talking about what it says on the tin. So it's those services that we commission that might involve a doctor or a nurse or another health professional as part of that delivery. And so just to highlight a few points, since the last committee meeting, we have sort of reinforced a lot of the key mechanisms and processes we already have in place around clinical governance, but we've put them into a standard operating guidance document so that we're very clear on the processes that we need to be implementing, and they're basically all in the same place. So that's quite a robust piece of work that's taking place to make sure that that happens. And that guidance document includes everything from regular reports to DMT, so clinical reports on specific services to our DMT, down to the serious incident response process that we have in place. And that applies both for providers of services and also for us as commissioners. So if you look to table 1, there's quite a lot of detailed information in terms of the different processes that we have in place in respect of a number of those different services. And just to flag up, the services that we're talking about specifically are substance misuse services, the sexual health services that we commission, NHS health checks, and the 0 to 19 Healthy Together service. And that last one is a service that includes the types of services that we provide through school nurses and health visitors as part of the school health programme. So in terms of that table 1, it just provides quite a bit of detail in terms of things like quality visits that we conduct, clinical audits where we're perhaps auditing a particular aspect of a clinical service against standards, and serious incidents. So those incidents that shouldn't have happened and often sadly result in a fatality. So that provides quite a bit of the detail. And then just finally towards the end of the document, so point 24, there have been an increase in the number of serious incidents reported in this last period. So for 21-22, there have been 31 incidents reported as compared with 16 in the previous reporting period, the previous year. We think that some of this may be attributed to COVID, but we can't say for sure. The other thing to flag up is that we are seeing an increase in the trend in serious incidents, but we're not just seeing this locally, we're seeing it regionally and nationally as well. So it is obviously an ongoing concern. And then the other thing related to that is that, as we've previously reported, the majority of those serious incidents relate to substance misuse service, so people who perhaps are currently users or have recently been users of that service. Just to try to address that aspect around substance misuse, there was previously a multi-agency drug and alcohol group, but this has been augmented quite a bit to make sure that is a multi-agency drug and alcohol related deaths review panel, and looks at deaths, not just those related to deaths that have those individuals who've been in contact with substance misuse services, but also those people where drug and alcohol has actually been a factor in their deaths. So there's quite a bit of work taking place around that. And I think they're the main points that I wanted to flag up.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Fiona. Have we got any questions or queries on the report? No. Mr. Richardson.
It's the page 87, the overview of arrangements. I always get slightly confused on these and what should come to corporate governance and what should go to the appropriate scrutiny committee. So we're showing on the left corporate governance committee, and we get exceptional reports, lessons to be learnt. Whereas to me, they would more naturally fall in being reported back to the health overview and scrutiny committee, because they've got the ongoing knowledge, which we haven't as a specialist panel, to actually, I would have thought, identify those issues better than we could and deal with them. So I'm just wondering if we got the mixture right between what comes to this committee and what this chart implies goes to the health overview and scrutiny committee, who I would have thought could do a more effective job on monitoring and overviewing those issues than we could, as part of everything from financial to one of the things you've just seen. I just think, are we asking this committee to do too many things, which it's not fully equipped for, where we have a committee that could actually do this more effectively and actually protect the council, well, not protect the council, actually work out better working arrangements if required on behalf of the council than we could at this committee.
Fair enough.
Do you want me to try to take
that? If you could, yeah. I think, to be honest, it does seem a fair point.
I mean, I think there's probably a place for this, at least part of this report, as you've suggested, to come to this committee to provide that assurance that the processes are in place. But equally, yes, I do agree. There is, as we've indicated in the flow chart, there is potential for some elements to get that added scrutiny through health and scrutiny committee. So that is something that does seem quite appropriate that we could also go there for part of this.
Perhaps, Chair, if I may, perhaps that's an action that we could take away
Yeah,
to review
certainly.
and see how it may fit together.
Yeah, that
Without
seems
trying to
fair.
avoid duplication, but
Yep.
it's a good point. Thank you.
Exactly.
You've just said what I was going to ask for, so thank you very much, Laura. And I think then we could have a smaller report back here, but with comment from Health and Overview Scrutiny that they had looked at those affected ones and would give us their assurance that they are being covered.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks. So if there's no other questions, moving to the recommendations then on page 85 of the agenda pack, can I take this report as being noted? Yep, it's agreed. Thank you. So moving to item 11, contract procedure rules, annual update 21-22. We have with us Kay Springthorpe, Procurement and Commissioning Support Manager, who is here to present this report to you. So over to you, Kay.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm here today to ask Corporate Governance Committee to note that we're proposing no changes to be made for this year to the contract procedure rules. They will be reviewed in 2023 in line with the new legislation from the bill that's currently going through Parliament for transforming public procurement. I'm also asking the committee to note the operation of the contract procedure rules during the period of July 2021 through to June 2022. There were 81 exceptions under Rule 6 of our contract procedure rules, 7 of which breached the UK public procurement threshold and were presented for approval to Cabinet where appropriate. 10 of which were for unforeseen emergencies as a result either for COVID or there being no reasonably sort of satisfactory alternative. And as addition to a current contract, they were approved by chief officers and the Director of Law and Governance. The remaining 64 exceptions are below threshold exceptions, which were approved by relevant chief officers. These mainly were due to COVID recovery and market instability, capacity pressures and increased controls that we've implemented as part of Oracle Fusion and the spend controls that we implemented off the back of COVID to increase visibility. There have been 13 modifications and variations to the contracts under Rule 30, and most of those were due to COVID-19 or increased government funding that we received, or variations to contracts to improve value for money due to changes in inflation.
Okay, thanks very much, Kay. That's summarised it quite nicely. Has anybody got any queries? David?
I don't know whether this is relevant, but the impression I got during the awful COVID period was that there was money being spent unwisely. Put it that way. I mean, have we got any evidence coming to the County Council on this subject? I think nationally there has to be an inquiry into the issuing of contracts and the sheer waste that took place of equipment that was purchased which was no use and all the rest of it. Do we have any county view on this?
I'm certainly personally not aware of any. I absolutely understand what you're saying on a national basis, but I'm not aware of any county rash spending and inappropriate procurement of services.
Sorry, just to add one bit. At the start of COVID, there was an awful lot of guidance issued by sort of central government, which was very much presumptive and just spend money. And we did issue internal guidance around actually you need to kind of sort of step back and see what's right for kind of the county area and make sure you're not just kind of forgetting your normal kind of, I suppose, thinking through what the sort of issues and what's the best way to deal with it. So we definitely got that sense from sort of national government that they were just overly keen to kind of get money out the door. And we did try and kind of, I'm not saying that they've got it right everywhere, but we did try and take a different approach. And it was just because government guidance, actually that's not a mandation. We still need to think through what's right for us here. So.
I wasn't being critical of anything that the County Council did. I'm just wondering whether there was any evidence has come since it emerged that that there were some false claims being made.
I think Declan's covered that. I think probably in many cases national government, I wouldn't say they were very, very keen to procure services, and yes, undoubtedly some of the areas they got it wrong, but it's good to hear that we took a bit more sort of overview of our responsibilities and making sure that we got value for money. So I don't think there's any, I don't want to tempt Providence, but I don't think there's any problems as far as the county is concerned, but certainly nationally there were huge problems. Definitely.
I wonder if I might just pick up one point Mr. Bill made relating to the potential for an inquiry. You may have picked up in the media, there is a national inquiry ongoing chaired by Baroness Hallett. And one of the areas that she will be intending to cover is for all local authorities, how they manage those sorts of procurement type issues. So on a national level, I expect that will be an area that will be examined in the course of the inquiry as it goes over the next year or so.
Thank you very much, Lauren. So, Mr. Richardson.
I suppose perhaps it addressed me being a bit obtuse and thick this morning, but I looked at this report and I thought, what is the point of it and what is the purpose? And I can't actually work out what we're looking at as a committee, because all it's telling us is that we broke the rules. We've got no detail about what the rules were we broke. I mean, we get wonderful bits like in paragraph 4 where it says there were 7 above the threshold, 6 were approved. Well, what happened to the one that wasn't? So, I mean, so what is the purpose of this report? What are we meant to be doing with it as a committee? And this addressed me being obtuse that says this is a pointless report for this committee without further information on background behind it, because I can't ask any questions about anything because I don't know which ones we approved on what basis and who signed them off. So if we're here as a quasi audit purpose, at the very least, presumably we should look at the 7 that went to Cabinet to see if we think Cabinet made a sensible decision. Now, I don't think that's the purpose of this committee, but it's the logical part of this report. So I really, particularly on procurement, fail to understand. I've asked innumerable questions on this committee about procurement over the years, particularly on things like contracts, guarantees, etc., etc. And I still don't actually see what we're looking at. If someone could explain to me what the committee is supposed to do with this report, I'd be extremely grateful, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks very much. To be honest, we're going to note it, but I understand what you're saying, and certainly the 6 that went to Cabinet were approved. My thoughts were exactly the same. I wonder what happened to the one that didn't go to Cabinet. But I think other than note it, and I think the whole thing is going to be reviewed in the light of new legislation coming forward in 2023. So when we next get a report back, which will, I'm not presumably post the new legislation, but as an audit function, I think it's fair comment to say that, you know, without greater detail, we can't really do other than note it. And perhaps next time round, we could just have some brief details or more brief details. And I don't think that would cause too much extra work. But I don't know whether officers have any other comment to make. No. All right. Mr. Neil. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to echo Terry's concerns about the lack of detail in the report, and also to ask for a little bit more context as well with regard to the 81 approved exceptions. And the indication in the presentation was that a number of those were related to COVID. So I'd like the sort of context as to what was the position before COVID hit, how many exceptions were being managed at that time, and presumably now that we are putting, thankfully, COVID behind us, the expectation is that the approved exception rate will be falling, hopefully significantly. Would I be right in coming to that conclusion? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. you would be right in presuming that's the case. However, it's more than just COVID that's impacted on this increase. So you can see from the charts in the document that we previously sat at a much lower level of exceptions. However, we've made some really positive steps in implementing Oracle Fusion that have increased the visibility that we have on the spend throughout the council. So those low value exceptions have increased because we've got an increased visibility, and I'd happily kind of demonstrate that and show Corporate Governance Committee the detail behind that, because it's quite powerful in that we are making big improvements and big steps with that. Obviously, I can provide all the detail on everything to everyone, and whatever you want to discuss, I'm more than happy to. If you want to come and spend a day and have a look, then that'd be great. But yes, the new rules, we will be reviewing what we report, how we report it, and we will come to you for that guidance as well. What would you like to see? What would be of interest? So we should start to see the exceptions coming down, and we should be able to give you a report next time with greater depth.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. I think the points are made are valid. Mr. Bolton.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not as tolerant as you. I'd like to know what these exceptions the Cabinet's actually made for the next meeting, so we can look at that. I mean, we are charged with governance. I mean, the Cabinet's not exempt from being scrutinised. I think we'll have those here so we know exactly what they have passed and the reasons why. Very good reasons, yeah. But we don't know.
No, I tend to agree, Mr. Bolter. We can do that for the next corporate governance meeting. Is if that would be possible? Okay.
That's no problem at all.
Okay, we'll do that, and also the one that didn't go to cabinet as well.
Perhaps suggest to you, Chair, that the obvious way around this is that we could do some sort of flow diagram about how these are picked up, where they go, who signs them off, at what level. Now, I appreciate that's probably within the contract procedures rules and detail, but I don't believe there's a flow chart there, although Declan might be able to tell me otherwise, that we give it. But the danger we have is we just note this, the implication is we've agreed to it. So rather than note it, I would just say that, we are unable to actually draw a conclusion from the information and have asked for additional information to be provided at a forthcoming meeting that might make it clearer. I mean, we're not suggesting anyone's done anything wrong or anything untoward. We just don't know because we haven't got any information.
Yeah.
I think we can do some just sort of setting out what the governance is around this, which obviously fits with sort of this committee's kind of raison d'etre, as it were. So yeah, we can do something on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we are asked to note the report. So moving to recommend, we asked them to note it, but with the comments that have been made as well regarding detail and being able to execute our role as a corporate governance committee. If we had more detail, it would be useful on those items that were referred to cabinet and the one that wasn't referred to cabinet, if they could come back next time. The other item is regarding recommendation B. The committee is asked to note that no changes are proposed to be made to contract procedure rules at this time, that the current rules, which will be reviewed in 2023 in line with the new legislation, currently remain fit for purpose. Can I take these recommendations as being agreed? I take that as agreed. Thank you. So now on to item 12, which is the internal audit progress against plan. We've got Matt here. So over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is a routine summary report of work undertaken and also talking about the high importance recommendations as well. I say routine because when the report was prepared, it was just over 7 months of the actual plan completed rather than the full year. So paragraph 4 talks about, once again, building on Mr. Bolter's comment, a healthy staffing situation. And again, without labouring a point, as audit manager, from my perspective, I sit on the regional committee of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and the number one question is how we're going to fill posts, because there's a real struggle nationally to fill the internal audit role. And also there's an external audit problem as well, as we've heard, that has a knock-on effect for the internal auditors as well, because the external auditors tend to poach the internal auditors as well to do work for them. But we're delighted to say, as it says there, we were able to fill both senior vacancies. And I think more importantly, not only were we able to fill, we were able to fill with a really good blend of staff. So we've got one former external auditor and we've got Joe, who's new to the public sector. So obviously brings another dimension as well. As the report also says about resources, we've got a contractor continuing to work for us possibly till the end of March. And I think given the way the market is, that's really good to be able to hold on to the contractor and have some strength through there. Another thing I was particularly pleased with was the guest auditor from De Montfort University that we had in to look at data analytics. We got some really good output from that, and that was actually paid for by De Montfort University as part of a placement. So it didn't cost either for us. So and we got some really good feedback from that guest auditor from some of the work there. In addition, obviously, we've had 2 SIPFA trainees through as part of their rotation scheme, and that always brings another dimension as well as the value added to them as they learn about the role of internal audit. So, you know, we've got a really healthy picture considering we're in the public sector, which is known for struggling at the minute. If Simon Parsons was still on the phone, I know he's got a different viewpoint from a Nottingham perspective, so we're very fortunate. And I just wanted to put on record, thank you obviously to Declan as well for being very supportive of that. Paragraphs 5 to 11 of the report talk specifically about the nature of our work and mention the types of audits, how we reach the opinion process, the grading, the volume of grant work remaining high, the investigation work, and other assurance work undertaken. And again, from my perspective as audit manager, I'm really keen that we get involved in projects from the outset in a critical friend role rather than coming in at the end and saying things that aren't very helpful timing wise. It talks also about how we give and receive training and how we assist the external auditor. Paragraphs 12 and 13 particularly focus on the high importance recommendations, and to me the good news is during this period there were no new high importance recommendations, but 4 remained in progress and 1 is no longer relevant because it's superseded, as it says actually in the report. Progress, if I'm being honest, candidly honest, is slower than I would have liked, but for what having challenged people on the delays, I personally believe them to be valid reasons, and I'm happy to take questions on them as well. Thank you, Chair.
Has anybody got any questions or queries? Mr. Walter.
Page 104, Chair. Overpayment. How much money are we talking about? Is the first question.
Right, let's just have a look. Page 104.
Which one is that, Mr. Bolter? Is that the one?
Children and Family Services, work completed. Overspend on early years grant. You know, how much, no indication how much money we're talking about there.
This was the big one that we sort of highlighted through sort of both this committee and scrutiny committee off the back of this last year. So it was about £4 million in total. So.
Right, okay, thank you. And the other one is the bit concerned about the on page 109. It's supposed to be completed by 2022. It's now been put to March 2023, a year later. Seems an awful long wait.
Fair point, Mr. Bolter. I did ask Kay whether she would talk about this, so I think we had to spread some, add some more.
This is for the externally hosted contracts one. So for this, we had things got moved out for a number of reasons, but mainly because we made some system changes. So previously we held departments held contracts within their departments and within their own contract management teams. And we've been working with our provider for our procurement database system to have contracts centrally stored. Unfortunately, that took us a lot longer than we thought to get that implemented. Then COVID hit and everything got pushed back. And we actually expanded the recommendation to cover the whole council and a toolkit that we've been implementing to give good practice on and guidance around procurement and signing contracts, etc. So we've pushed that out because we've actually extended the recommendation considerably to add in extra work.
Yeah, so more or less centralising contracts, so there's an overview generally rather than within departments. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's created a lot more work. Thank you very much, Kay. Mr. Richardson.
I'm appearing grumpy this morning. I don't mean to be. But as an illustration on page 103, I had to laugh. I just looked at the second one down. It's got ISRA, Granicus report in Parliament, new module launched by Granicus. Well, I don't know what an ISRA is. I can't find any. I hate acronyms. Tell us what it means. So I went later down to the big bit, and then it says ISRAs and DPIAs. So it's getting worse by the second. I haven't got the foggiest what Granicus is. So if we're having a report, could we please have one that's written in English without acronyms? So that at least I've got a slight hope. Now, I probably appreciate that after the length of time I've been on, I should know what some of these acronyms are. But even if we had a guide at the bottom to them would be useful, because otherwise it's difficult for us to comment if we don't know actually what we're talking about. But I'm sure Granicus sounds like a cereal, so it's probably quite tasty with, I don't know, some raspberry coulis or something. I don't know.
Matt.
Yeah, first of all, I totally take your point. Yes, we'll take that on board. Just for the benefit, though, ISRA is information systems reporting. So it's actually looking at the reports from how information is handled, and Granicus is a reporting tool. So if the information is handled any differently, then we will actually go back and look at it, any changes, and see and sign them off, actually look at the risks, assess the risks, and sign off as well. So, but it's an excellent point. Thank you, and apologies.
Thanks very much, and thanks for taking Mr. Richardson's comments on board. I can't imagine Mr. Richardson being grumpy under any circumstances.
On your Mondays.
Right, so if we have no further questions, or I don't think we have, can I take the report as being noted? Everybody agreed? Thank you. So the next item is the SIPFA's Audit Committee guidance. Again, Matt, over to you to present.
Thank you. Again, from an audit manager perspective, my role in this typically would be to know very much at a high level what is being proposed to happen. And then stage 2 would be to know when things have happened and been approved, particularly through this committee. And then stage 3, be aware of any resultant changes and the effect on me as an audit manager. At present, we're only moving towards stage 2, but with this backdrop, I'll take the committee through the report gladly. The report details SIPFA's revised guidance on audit committees. The publication was due in the early summer, but was significantly delayed. Paragraph 2 explains that the government will eventually need to introduce legislation if it is to mandate audit committees and independent members, but more later on that. Paragraph 4 explains the current terms of reference for the committee and that they're adequate for an audit committee. And then moving on to paragraphs 5 to 7, the head of audit has been reporting to committee for 2 years now on the Redmond review. A year ago, the committee was informed that the government had consulted on its responses to Redmond, and this included strengthening the role of audit committees. On the back of that, SIPFA committed to reviewing its guidance and seeking support from key stakeholders, including DLUC. Taking on your point, Mr. Richardson, the Department of Levelling Up Health and Communities, of course. Paragraph 8 explains how the guidance has been revised, including separate sections for members and for officers, and they're attached in appendices A and B to this report. Paragraphs 9 and 10 spell out the importance SIPFA and others give to audit committees in their role of ensuring good governance, risk and control arrangements. Moving on to paragraph 11, the report briefly then introduces the various chapters and functions. The committee's terms of reference already include the core functions and even one of the possible wider areas functions of Treasury management scrutiny. There's recognition, though, in aspect of treasury management, that this is an area that requires specialist training and guidance. Moving again through the report, paragraphs 13 and 14 talk about the independence from executive decision making, and the accountability of audit committees is covered. Additionally, regarding accountability, the guidance advises an annual report of the committee's performance, culminating in an annual report to the full council. Paragraphs 15 to 21 detail how the guidance advises that the membership and effectiveness of an audit committee can be enhanced by giving facility to appoint co-opted independent members. The government agrees to this, but at such time as it can be affected, until at such time it can be affected, local authorities should follow SIP for guidance. Again, in paragraph 17 and 18, SIP give reasons for 2 co-opted independent members, and in paragraph 19 it explains some of the benefits. Moving then through the report again, paragraphs 20 to 22 talk about the County Council's planned approach to appointing co-opted members, including an amendment required to the Constitution and the proposed recruiting arrangements. The appendices to this report, I think, contain guidance on a number of areas, including 4 useful tools to ensure knowledge and skills are built in, and good practice effectiveness is monitored and reported on. And then paragraph 25 moves on to provide a broader outline of improvements over the next 12 months, culminating in the committee's first annual report a year on from now. The head of audit has then made some suggested amendments to the terms of reference, which are contained in Appendix C. With the backdrop of what I said earlier, I'll happily take any questions, but obviously there are other officers here that might be able to help as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. I mean, the report makes clear pretty much everything, and we're on a journey, and I think we're in the process of recruiting independent people, or will be. Has anybody got any queries or questions? Mr. Bolton.
It was nice to note that the proposed legislation says there should be no pre-meetings. We should act as independent people, no political bias, and I think this committee does show that. But I think the important thing is it's now put on the par with a licensing committee or planning committee, but there's no pre-meetings taking place, so nobody's got preconceived ideas from up on high that what should or shouldn't happen. So I'm pleased to see that in the new legislation.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Bolton. Mr. Richardson, you got.
Yes, just finding the right page, Mr. Chairman.
I think you make valid points, Mr. Bolton. It is non-political. It is a job we have to do and do it properly.
It's the timetable for decisions, really. Paragraph 29, it says a report will be considered by the Council's Constitution Committee at its meeting on the 25th of November, and the views of this committee will be reported to both the Constitution Committee and the full Council. But what's not in here is what does New World for the Corporate Governance Committee look like now? You know, if you read all the stuff on the Redmond report, the implications are we've got to delve far deeper into financial aspects than we've ever done before. Technically, the committee will be responsible for financial overview, quite rightly so, because that's what we are here for as elected members, to do it. So I have grave concerns about, I mean, if you just take today with the number of reports and how much time we can spend on each one, about whether this committee can physically cope with the workload. So are there any suggestions perhaps we should have 2 committees of a corporate governance and a separate audit committee? And again, we can't comment because there's nothing in here unless I've missed it that I've seen. I think there is a huge amount of work in this, and it would be nice to understand what that report to the Constitution Committee is going to look like. But unless I've missed it, I don't know if there's one attached. I mean, so many pages, it might be attached, but is there a copy of the report here which is going to the Constitution Committee?
Is
it right at the bottom somewhere?
I think the Constitution Committee report is simply to amend the terms of reference to reflect the changes that have just been discussed.
But can they do that? Sorry through you, Chair. Can they do that without understanding implications on this committee, time that might be required, officers' time that might be required to produce reports? So if I'm a Constitution Committee, I'm thinking, well, do we need 2 committees? How is it going to work? I mean, I know we know what the terms of reference are, but if you just look at the first block on wherever it is, page, it will be here somewhere. Page 137. 137. I mean, if you just look at that alone, that list, I mean, the amount of work involved just in that list is staggering. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it. I'm just wondering about physically and practically how we can do it, and what guidance can we give to the Constitution Committee that, after all, might actually want to go further and say we need 2 separate committees rather than 1 committee, or are we having 1 committee and, to use the parlance, suck it and see and then move on? I'm just not clear.
There isn't any proposal to change the terms of reference or structure of the sort of committees at this stage. I mean, obviously that's something that can be looked at if it proves to be necessary, but for now the proposal is simply to amend the terms of reference to reflect the changes that that Matt has highlighted.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly have a look at that, and we'll see how things progress. So there is a lot of work to do, and if need be, we will have more meetings, whatever. Have we got any other queries or questions? No, we haven't. So the committee asked to note the update provided by the SIP for 2022 guidance for local authorities and police, and to note support the revised membership in terms of reference for the Corporate Governance Committee as set out in Appendix C. And we are. Yeah. Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that, David. We are going to look at that. And I think it's
through you, if I mean, I've asked this question now for the last 18 months. And that's probably in the minutes at each meeting. We've still got no further forward about actually, you know, we were talking to Neil and he was going to come and hold a special meeting for this, he agreed, about what it might look like going forward. I appreciate he's not here today through no fault of his own, so no criticism of Neil. But if we're truly going to give some guidance to Cabinet and or the Constitution Committee or whoever, surely we need a separate meeting as a committee to understand the implications and to actually try and give some guidance about how it might actually work in practice. Because I have a fear that we might turn up here one day and instead of 300 pages, we'll have 900 pages. And let's be honest, with the best boy in the world, I struggle to read 357 pages, let alone 900. So if we're going to do the job properly, how, when, and what way are we going to do it properly?
Yeah, I think it would be possible to to have a report to this committee on the ways that we're going to implement it, and I think that those points taken up on board. Could
I perhaps suggest to you, Chairman, that we had a working group meeting of this committee, so it's not in public, it's out of camera. We can sit down with Neil and other officers and actually just, you know, have a debate about what might be the best way forward.
Yeah, quite happy to do that. Quite happy to do that. Yeah. So we have talked about it for a long time. It has been going on for years. The Redmond report is going to put more responsibility on the committee, and also the need to have independent external auditors is going to, I think recruiting them is going to be quite difficult, but I've no problem with having a meeting outside to discuss what needs to happen. I don't know how long Neil's going to be away, but he's probably more up to date on what's going on. And when he comes back, maybe we could just have a meeting on that basis. Matt?
Yeah, I'll certainly pass that back to him. He's expected to be about 4 weeks, but no,
Okay.
Neil, as soon as the YouTube comes out of this, he'll be listening to it, I'm quite sure anyway. So,
My goodness, I hope not.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I hope not. Let the man get better. I think listening to us won't do him any good at all. All right. All right. Okay. Thanks for those points. So So as I said, we're asked to note the update on the CIPFA 22 guidance and to note and support the revised membership terms and references for the Corporate Governance Committee as set out in Appendix C. I take that as agreed. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. So governance arrangements, external bodies. We've got Lauren Haslam, Director of Law and Governance, will present this item. So over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chair. Members might recall, I think it was probably the meeting before last, members requested reports about the governance issues arising from the Freeport, I think was the original request. Following that, discussions took place between myself, with Declan and with Neil, and we thought it presented an opportunity to bring together a report on those bodies in which the County Council has a key role. There are 5 highlighted in the report, so the Freeport, ESPO, LGPS and the LGPS Central, East Midlands Shared Service, which we've heard about this morning, and Active Together. The report sets out the governance arrangements for each of these organisations. As members will see, each has a bespoke governance arrangement. There isn't really a one-size-fits-all for this sort of setup. Some, as you'll see, like the Freeport and ESPO Trading Limited, are set up as a company limited by guarantee, and the governance to support that is contained within the Articles of Association and Members Agreement. Others are set up as a joint committee of the Council, and with the participating organisations and the governance underpinned by the Constitution and the Servicing Authority agreements, overseen by Management Committee and subject to review by internal and external audits, for example, in the case of ESPO, EMS and the LGPS. The only other observation I'd make, members, is in relation to the Freeport, to note that this is still being developed and is subject to ongoing governance discussions. The report is intended just to provide an overview, and it's suggested that there be an annual update on the external bodies and how they're operating, brought to this committee on an annual basis. But for today, the committee's asked to note the report and note the recommendation that there be an annual update to the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. So does anyone have any comments or questions? Mr. Bolter.
Yeah, very. Page 278, item 30. Who are the 2 members?
Sorry, did you say who are the 2 members?
Yes.
Oh.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Richardson, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. It's really good to see all this in one place, and it's extremely useful. Looking at the chart that's under paragraph 8, I suppose the bit that interests me is that we've got the corporate governance arrangements, but then to me this should be an additional column which says scrutiny arrangements. So, for instance, I know Scrutiny Commission looks at EMSS, which we did recently as an example, but I don't know what the scrutiny arrangements are for the other areas of it, or indeed should there be any scrutiny function of some of these within this council. So I don't know who scrutinises the others, under what basis, because I assume there should be some scrutiny arrangements in there, but I can't, from this report, unless I've missed it, which I apologise, I couldn't see what those scrutiny arrangements were.
So interesting to see, because I'm not sure what authority we have to actually change some of these external bodies.
I don't think it's within the authority of this committee to make any changes to this setup. We could do some more work on the scrutiny arrangements and bring that back, because I don't have that information to hand, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Lauren. I mean, what I was suggesting was I'm not totally, even if Scrutiny Commission recommendations, would they have to be implemented by these outside bodies who have separate governance arrangements?
I think that's the point. That's exactly right.
Okay, so we'll get some guidance on that. Can I take, if there are no other questions, can I take this report as noted, and that all comments made by will be noted and captured in the minutes in the usual way? I take that as agreed. Yeah, Under the recommendation, the committee is asked to note further updates will be provided to the committee as appropriate. Take that as agreed. Yep. Okay, so the next item is the Treasury Management update. So over to you, Nick, to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Right, there's going to be a very minor delay here because I've just computer's crashed. Apologies for that.
I think probably having the same problems as well, Nick, trying to flick through the reports without the mod working.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of crashed. I think it's back on running again. I just need to load it again now. Right, I think I'm back in again now. Sorry about that. So yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report summarises the position as at the end of September, so at the end of Q2 of the financial year. So starting with the section in paragraph 2.2 to paragraph 2 to 4, this just reminds members of the requirements of the annual Treasury Management Strategy, and in particular the role of the Corporate Governance Committee in considering the quarterly Treasury Management reports. To ensure that those with responsibility for Treasury Management fully understand the implications and that the responsibilities with respect to delegation and reporting are being fulfilled in line with the SIT for Treasury Management Code. Moving on to the background from paragraph 6, this expands on what Treasury Management is defined as, and in particular the management of the Council's cash investments to ensure that they are consistent with the Council's risk appetite as defined in the Treasury Management Strategy, but also to ensure that funding is managed to ensure that the Council's capital programme is delivered. This may of course involve undertaking external borrowing, although this has not been required for over 10 years now and is unlikely in the next few years, unless opportunities arise to reschedule debt to the Council's financial benefit, a possibility that perhaps would become more likely as interest rates increase towards the level of our historical debt. I'll say more about that in a minute. So moving on to section from paragraph 9, this is the usual summary of the key points from our Treasury Management Advisor Link's economic summary for the period. Obviously, it reflects on the fact that there is an expectation that gross domestic product will shrink during the autumn and winter, and this is certainly in line with the most recent economic forecasts that have accompanied the autumn statement last week. And the other main point was the original fiscal statement that has obviously things have moved on significantly since then. So although we have the usual problem about things being out of date, things are moving very quickly at the moment. So therefore, it's perhaps more of an acute problem than it normally would be. Moving on, paragraph 13 onwards. So within the quarter, we're concerned with £176 million of loans matured at an average rate of 0.94%, and £200 million of new loans were placed at an average rate of 2.95%. And at the end of that period, the overall portfolio totaled 432 million, which is broken down by institution in the table in paragraph 17. Whilst we're looking at that table, it is worth mentioning that there's been quite a lot of noise in the press recently around local authorities investing in Qatari banks. Just to confirm, we're not one of those, and in fact, we do not currently invest in any of the Middle East banks. There is the potential for some confusion on this point, though, as I think both Melton and Blaby potentially were named within Leicestershire as having done that. So a further £0.2 million of private debt was received from the 2017 investment. 11.1 million of the original 20 million has now been returned, in addition to £3 million of interest. And the remaining 8.9 million has a current market value of £9.3 million. So that represents a return of investment of 4.6% and brings the average for the overall portfolio to 2.26%. Moving down to paragraph 18, this just confirms that during this period, no loans had a subsequent breach of the authorised lending list. And in paragraph 19, this is just a point I made about debt rescheduling earlier. As gilt prices fell significantly on the back of the original fiscal statement by Kwasi Kwarteng, it did look as if we were getting close to a position where potentially we could repay some of our long-standing debt and it would be worthwhile. When we consider this, there's a number of factors and obviously a lot of uncertainty in making such a decision, and repayment of existing debt would increase or bring forward the time when new additional borrowing would be undertaken. So we would then need to make a judgment on where interest rates would be at the time that that new borrowing was required. But in any case, those potential opportunities disappeared quite quickly as the Bank of England stabilised the gilt market, and more widely, some market confidence was restored on the back of Rishi Sunak and subsequently Jeremy Hunt's appointments. Paragraph 20 talks about that during the period the council has operated within the Treasury and prudential indicators, and that no difficulties are envisaged as we move forwards in the short term. And then just finally, as predictions on where the peak of interest rates will be now has eased slightly from perhaps over 5% to under 5%. Our forecast of interest earned over the period has fallen from 6.4 million at the end of Q2 to 5.5 million now. Sorry, 6.4 million at the end of Q1, so 5.5 million at the end of Q2. But clearly that's still £4 million more than was originally budgeted for in February. That was all I was going to say. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thanks very much. So has anybody got any queries or questions apart from national economic policy and Mr. Bill?
You mentioned the economy is shrinking. Well, that has an impact on everything that this county council does. That MAG has set out this, has accepted this, the figures for growth based on the situation that used to be, and we're planning now for so many thousand houses and new employment sites. But are we basing our strategy on a situation that is no longer valid? If people can't afford to buy houses, which I assume is the situation, should we be planning for houses? I mean, we've got this massive crisis about the Melton Road. If people can't afford to move out into the new area of Melton, should we be proceeding with the Melton Road at this time? I mean, it raises just that one sentence has implications for so much of what we're doing as a county council. I'm just wondering whether we should take that line and just look at everything that we're doing.
I take your point, Mr. Bill. I think there's a limit to what we can. Global economics, national economics are. Yeah, I mean the predictions are that the gross domestic product will shrink slightly next year. We know where interest rates are going. The market forces will certainly change things. I think all the scrutiny commissions and everybody is very aware of what you say. But so broadly speaking, across all the scrutiny commissions, across Cabinet, and all throughout the county council, we've got to be aware. But I don't think we can go down to see, I mean, what the market conditions are in the housing market. Yeah, obviously things are going to impact, but hopefully things are going to be a lot more stable in after the last budget. But I don't have an answer. I don't think anybody has an answer. I mean, there are good points, but the world has to continue, and the limit of what we can do on corporate governance, I think we've got to limit our spectrum to the county council rather than go into macroeconomic policy. And but yeah, I take very much what you're saying. Thanks very much, Mr. Bill. So if there are no other questions, I will move that can we take the report as noted and that all the comments made will be recorded in the minutes in the usual way. Is that agreed? Yep, thank you. So the next item is the revised members planning code of good practice. So Lauren is going to present this, so over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the members will recall that the Council's main member code of conduct was updated in December 2022 following the report on the Committee on Standards in Public Life. This is the planning code of conduct which relates to the DCRB activities, and the minor changes proposed to that code to make it consistent with the local code. So the changes there primarily relate to the way in which interests are recorded to bring this in line and, as I say, make it consistent. But it's also, we've also taken the opportunity to update the guidance on predetermination and predisposition. The revised code, or the code that's proposed to be revised, was considered by the DCRB and they were happy with those proposed amendments, and so it's brought to this committee as well for consideration in light of the oversight this committee has over standards generally. The recommendation is that the code is adopted, subject to the Chief Exec being authorised to make any additional changes, including those arising by the consideration by the DCRB. I don't think there is anything else that I can usefully add to that, so I hope that's sufficient for today's purposes.
Thank you, Lauren. I think that's clear. Has anybody got any questions or queries? Mr. Richardson.
Just very quickly, I don't think there's anything here, Lauren, that anyone can disagree with. The only bit I wonder if it might need more clarification will be on page 311, site visits. Most planning authorities actually do in their guidance actually stipulate when site visits should take place. Whereas this just implies there can be site visits, but gives no guidance on when there should be a site visit. Which strikes me as quite a big hole. There's no point having a procedure for site visits if we're never going to have them, which I know is not normal for this council, and therefore there should be something in there about when a site visit is required, and therefore all members of that committee are therefore then required to go on the site visit.
Yes, happy to take that back and have a look at it.
Okay, thanks very much, Lauren.
Yep.
So with that point, we're asked to, oh, Mr. Bill.
This might be regarded as a flippant point, but this code of conduct business always, it always strikes me that it's all a little bit one-sided. By and large, in all the years I've been in local government, that all members and indeed officers stick to what is decent, honest, and true. Obviously, there's always the odd exception, but across this county, it's I've got total confidence in everybody and the way we work. But I can't say the same about our friends in Westminster, who seem to be working. Well, it's not everybody. You can't generalise, but there is a tendency amongst our lords and masters, if you like, to stick to sort of 18th century rules of what's right and what's wrong. So I get a bit aggrieved that those who behave in such a way down in Westminster seem to have the right to assume that people in local government behave in the same way. I'm sorry I'm sorry I've raised that, but it's how I feel. I've got confidence in the way counties and districts work in this county, and I've every faith in colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. I think I think the point you make is that across the board, in county, officers and members are have a high level of professionalism and are well aware of their duties and obligations. I'm not going to comment on Westminster and the behaviour because we could be here for the next 12 months talking about it. But I think really we've got to concentrate on our own thing. I agree. I agree that we I have confidence in our officers and members. We may not agree on things, but there is a sensible way ahead. But let's take comfort from that. And leave it at that. So, if there are no other questions, the committee is recommended to agree that the County Council be recommended to adopt the revised planning code of good practice as appended to this report, subject to the Chief Executive being authorised to make any changes, including those arising from its consideration by the Development Control and Regulatory Board. I'm happy to move this
Can we just add in the comment made by this committee about the site visits?
Yeah, subject, yeah, and that's taken on board. The comment about the site visits, which we're going to have a look at, see if we can define when a site visit is necessary. Lauren's taken that away. I'm happy to move this recommendation. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? So there's no dissent. And the final the final report is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Report in 21-22 and updates on complaints and freedom of information's request. So we now have Simon Parsons.
Chairman, Simon unfortunately has been delayed and isn't able to join the meeting. So if you're agreeable, rather than defer it, as the committee's only asked to note the report.
Yeah, we'll note it.
I wonder if I might perhaps just do my best to take you through it. I won't have the level of detail that Simon has, but I can take away any questions.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you, Lauren. Look, has anybody got any questions or queries they'd like to raise on this report? Mr. Bolter.
Yes, Chair, I'm rather disturbed by this report because it doesn't actually, in my opinion, give the true facts. It says in the report there's no public reports 2021-2022. In fact, there was. I've got an email from Lauren in September about a public report, a report of public interest. It's obviously published in the Mercury as well about a case.
I think that's just a matter of the start and end of the year and the year that Simon operates from. That will be reported in the next annual report, I believe.
Well, I think it's of grave importance. I think it ought to be discussed sooner rather than later. There's some comments in there that are very disturbing by the Ombudsman, where he found many cases of maladministration with the County Council. And I've not seen any anywhere that's been rectified. And I think it said it will be referred to in this annual report. It didn't say next year's annual report, it said this year's annual report. So I'm concerned about that. And I want to know I'd like to know why. First of all, the director isn't here this morning to actually receive questions on this report, because I think it's puts the County Council in a very bad light.
Okay, well, look, we'll pass your comments on them. The majority of complaints and everything else are well, in fact, all, as far as I'm aware, are published with the outcomes and results. I'll just ask Lauren, is there any that aren't being published on or aren't in included in next year's or whatever.
Yes, I think that I simply think it is a matter of timing, because that report was published just before the cabinet that it went to, which was in the middle of October, and I think this report's probably got an end date in September, I'm assuming. Obviously, it's written by someone else, so I can't be precise on the timing of the dates, but it's the public report that you're referring to, the adult social care one, was reported to the cabinet, and the cabinet report referred to the actions that had been taken, in that the criticisms of the Ombudsman were accepted, the remedial work that was required had been put in place and was underway, and the remedy, so far as the complainant was concerned, had been actioned. So the cabinet was satisfied that the report had been acted on in the appropriate way and the recommendations had been implemented. And there's a time frame within which to do that, 6 months from the date of the report. So by next April, some of the remedial actions will have to be completed. And if you might recall, that entailed a review of a number of cases to so that there was satisfaction in the sense that no one else had been in the same position. Mr. Wilson attended the cabinet and gave an explanation to cabinet as to how that work was being undertaken.
Okay, it's just that some recommendations have to be done within 3 months, some within 6 months. But I think, well, I'd have thought that would have been so important it would have come to this meeting rather than further another 12 months. It's an annual report, and wait another 12 months for that, I think is not really satisfactory. Mrs. McLaren sent me the email in September. The report was dated before then. The husband report was dated before then. So I think it was June. Actually, it was taken back. So it's quite a long way away.
The Ombudsman's report was issued in draft in around maybe June, July.
Yes.
It wasn't agreed until September, October, and it was subject to an embargo until the date that it was, the date that I wrote to members of this committee was the date that it was released by the Ombudsman. So it wasn't possible to do anything in relation to that report until that date.
Mr. Richardson.
I just wonder, Mr. Chairman, I would think we have got a mechanism to meet Mr. Bolter's concerns. Presumably, now the report is unembargoed. You have your own spokesperson on adults community that can be requested to go to the next adults communities meeting, and therefore, I think this committee considers an annual report, whereas I would have thought urgent individual items would go quite naturally to the appropriate overview and scrutiny committee if called in. Is that right?
Over to you, Don.
So I'm sure Mr. Wilson would be happy to bring the same report that he took to cabinet and give an explanation to the actions that have been taken on it. But it's been, I mean, I can only assure you from the work that I know that's been ongoing, it's the recommendations have been pretty much implemented. It's all bar complete. But if members want to have assurance in relation to that, that would be the way in which that could be achieved.
Chair, that all these cases have got to go through a year's cases have got to be gone through to make sure that the information is correct given to the person involved. If any of those found fault, can that come back to this committee?
As far as I'm aware, I think the point Mr. Richardson makes, if the adults and communities or whoever want to see the report, it is there. We get an overview of the report. I know from reading them, they are punctilious in responding to the Ombudsman and implementing the recommendations almost exclusively. I think we'll take your point up with the complaints manager, Simon Parsons, and the reason he's not here is unfortunately has been delayed. But if we can do that, I think I would take comfort in the fact that they're just not brushed under the carpet. They are extensively investigated to the nth degree, and anything that goes to the Ombudsman is almost certain to, well, it is implemented unless there's something absolutely ludicrous suggested.
Could my Are concerns reported in the minutes of the meeting, though, Chair?
Yeah, your concerns can be noted, and we're going to tell Simon Parsons certainly. But I mean, I think your main concern is that we're not just that there is action being taken, that we're not just delaying it for 6 months or 12 months, and I understand that. But rest assured, it is being taken.
That's just the other point on that, Chair. There's a requirement to report back to the Ombudsman at the end of the 6-month period to confirm what action has been taken. So that will happen, but on or before next. April.
That will take place, Mr. Richard.
I would assume as well that if it's been considered by cabinet, it would be in the cabinet minutes anyway.
It should be in the cabinet minutes. I would have definitely thought so, definitely. But the points are taken, and I think that we can take comfort in the fact that action is being taken and resolutions met on every single complaint to the Ombudsman. So, does anyone have any other questions? No. All right. So, can I take the report as noted, and that all the comments made will now be captured in the minutes in the usual way? I take that as agreed. Yeah, thank you. So the date of the next meeting, it doesn't seem far away. The next meeting is scheduled to take place on the 27th of January 2023 at 10 a.m. There are no urgent items, and thank you all for your attendance today and your input. And I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.